We're starting with a balance of 1,000 euros. We're ending somewhere close to 41,000. 92% win on short trades, 92% win on long trades, a relative drawdown of only 11%. No running drawdowns. The general performance of the EA is just up and up. If you have a computer, an internet connection, and 2 hours of time, then by the end of this video, you will practically own this trading robot. Even if you know nothing about coding, Metatrader or MQL as a coding language. We will go step by step. We will look at all the codings, and I will explain everything. So with no more shenanigans, let's start. Before we get to the coding, let's first look at the EA itself. So here I am in the strategy tester. I'm going to run it on USDJPY, 5-minute chart starting from 2023 until 2024. We're running it on every tick, and I'm starting with a balance of 1,000 euros. Let's look at the input table. We are putting a 3% risk on every trade. We have set our stop loss and take profits to be 20 pips, and we want our trailing stop to be triggered once the trade is in 15 points profit, so 1.5 pip. And we want our trailing stop loss to be trailed by 1 pip, so 10 points. We're running the EA between 700 hours in the morning until 2100 hours in the evening. So let's start the test. So the EA performs the trading operations only during the trading hours. So we have defined it to be between 700 hours and 2100 hours. So during the night, the EA is not going to do anything. Once the trading period starts, the EA will start trading everything automatically. It will then open up the trades, it will trail the stop losses, and then it will close the trades. All operations done automatically. Now I will speed up the test. So the test has finished. We started with a balance of 1,000 euros, and we're ending up with somewhere around 41,800. History-wise, if you look, there are a lot of trades which are in profit. There will be some trades which are going to be in losses as well. If we go back to Metatrader, the first thing you will notice is that there are no running drawdowns. There are periods of consecutive losses, like here, there are periods of stagnation, but if you let the EA run for a longer period of time, the general performance of the EA is up and up. If you look at the backtest results, we're starting with a balance of 1,000 euros, we're ending somewhere close to 41,000. 92% win on short trades, 92% win on long trades, a relative drawdown of only 11%. Now this EA requires very tight spreads. And normally on brokers, the EAs that you're going to find the tightest spreads are USDJPY, GBPUSD, and EURUSD. So we're going to run on those three. So USDJPY we have seen. Let's very quickly run it on GBPUSD as well. Again, 5-minute chart starting from 2023 until today, every tick, and 1,000 euros. Let's start the test. Again, you will notice that there are no running drawdowns because of a very tight stop loss. There are periods during which the EA does not do very well. So somewhere between August and December, it actually was stagnant, in fact, losing a little bit of money. But overall, the performance of the EA still remains up and up over a longer period of time. Looking at the backtest results, we started with 1,000 euros. We're ending up with 4,600. Again, 92% short trade win and 92% long trades win. A relative drawdown of 17%. Let's quickly run it on EURUSD. And once again, no running drawdowns, as I said, because of a very tight stop loss, periods of consecutive losses, periods of stagnation, but the general performance of the EA remains up and up. Looking at the backtest results, we started with 1,000 euros, we're ending up with 4,300. A relative drawdown of 14%, 91% win on short trade, 94% win on long trades. So the EA performs really, really well. Now, before we dive into more details and start coding the entire stuff, let's start looking at the strategy first. So the strategy is extremely simple. What we're betting on is that if the price is moving in a certain direction, that it will continue to move in the same direction by at least 1.5 more pips. That's the entire strategy. Now you can have different ways of defining when to take trades. The one that I'm using here is looking at the last high and the last low. So the EA is going to put orders on the last high and on the last low. And after the trade comes down to our stop order, then we're basically betting that it was moving in that direction, so it will continue to move in that direction by another 1.5 pip. Once it moves in that direction, in our favorable direction by more than 1.5 pip, we start to trail our stop loss very aggressively by 1 pip only until the time the trade either goes in the direction of our TP or it comes back and hits our stop loss which we are trailing. So that's the entire strategy. Now you can use different methods. For example, you can use moving average crossovers. Once the fast moving average crosses the slow moving average, you can take the trade in the general direction of where the market is moving and then bet that it's going to move by more than 1.5 pip. You can use RSI. So for example, if the RSI goes from below 70 to above 70, you take the general trade in the direction of where the price is moving, and then you bet that it's going to move another 1.5 pip, so you can start trading the stop loss. So entry criteria can be many. The general strategy is if the price is moving in a certain direction, I will continue to move in that direction by at least 1.5 more pip. Now this EA works extremely well when the market is trending. So it's going in a general direction, either upward or downward. It's during the stagnant period, the chaotic market periods, and volatile market periods that the strategy is going to suffer. Now for our friends who are generally new to the entire coding, let's quickly look at what softwares you're going to need. So the first thing is you're going to head to Google and you're going to type Metatrader. And here on the download tab, you will find that Metatrader 5 is available for Windows and for Mac. It's also available for Linux. We're going to download it for Windows. And once you have downloaded it and installed it, when you open it, you will see a screen like this. If you head to the view and you select Market Watch, that's where you're going to see all of the currency pairs. If you're missing yours, you can add it here. So for example, if I wanted to add New Zealand CHF, I type it here, and when I hit it, it appears here. If I right click on it and I select chart window, we're going to get the chart in this window. The second thing you're going to open up in the view is your navigator. And this is where once you have an account on the broker, you're going to connect it here. You can right click here, you can log into a trade account. And here you're going to provide your login details and select the server which is provided by your broker to connect. The third thing that we were using, again in the view, is the strategy tester. And this is what we were using to run our backtest. I have already written the EA. It's called Scalping Robot Forex. But we will rewrite it and I will go line by line and explain everything. If you look at the input tab, this is where we define all of the variables for the EA. So for example, how much risk do I want to take on every trade? That's 2%. How much is my take profit or a stop loss point? I'm putting it as 20 pips up and down. Then when does my trailing stop triggers? And I'm setting it up at 1.5 pip. And then I want to trail my stop loss by 1 pip. I'm going to run it on 5 minutes chart, starting from 700 hours until 2100 hours. So these are all the input variables that we collect information from our user, and we will be coding all of this step by step. And that we do by heading to the IDE, which is the development environment. When you will click on it, Meta Editor 5 will open up, and it will look something like this. If you don't have the navigator window, then it is in the view. You can select the navigator window. And here in the experts folder, all of our EAs, our trading robots, they are going to be coded and stored. I'm going to hit new, and I'm creating an expert advisor. And let's call it a scalping robot. And I hit next, and then finish. And this is the generic template that I get to. Now, all of the stuff that's written after 2 forward slashes, that's considered by MQL5 to be comments. I'm going to remove them to clean up the template. And after the cleanup, the template looks something like this. Now, there are 3 functions which come with the expert advisor automatically. The first one is Onit function, and these are all event based. So going back to Metatrader, now the market is closed, so we're not going to get a tick. But whenever there is a new price that arrives in Metatrader, that's what Metatrader calls a tick. So it's the arrival of a tick, and then on every tick, all the codes which are written on the OnTick functions, so here, are going to be run. All the codes written here under the Oninit function, which is initialization function, are going to be run when the EA is initialized. So when you attach it to a chart, on the first run of the EA, all the codes written here are going to be executed. The deinitialization is the opposite of initialization. So every code that's written here is going to be run when the EA is stopped. Now, besides these 3 functions, we're going to need a lot of other functions as well. And don't worry about it. I will go through every function line by line and explain the code. So let's start. I will start creating all of the functions below this comment line so that we can separate between the OnTick function, initialization function, deinitialization function, and our general functions that we are writing ourselves. So the first function we're going to need is the isNewBar function. And that's the function that's going to check on Metatrader that whether a new candle has opened. So all of the ticks that arrive in between these candles, so that we don't run the EA on every tick, but we only run the EA on the initialization of a new candle. The way to write this is we're going to call this a bool function. A bool function returns the value of either true or false. So we start by creating a variable previous time, and it's a date time variable. I'm assigning it a value 0, so basically leaving it blank. Then what I'm doing is I'm getting the current time on the server by using the itime function, and this function comes generic with MQL. So when you will type itime and open up the bracket, it will ask for 3 inputs. The first one is which chart, and if we write underscore symbol, that basically means whatever chart that the EA is attached to, use that symbol. Then the next one is period current, which is whatever is the period currently. And later on, we're going to define a variable by the name of time frame. But I will change it already here by saying this is the variable that I will send. So what's the time frame? And then which bar do I want to check it on? So this is bar 0, the last bar. This is bar 1, bar 2, bar 3, and so on and so forth. So I want the value of the current bar. Now, once I get the current time, which is the time on which the current bar is started, then I can check whether the previous time is equals to current time. If the previous time is equal to the current time, then it basically means that no new candle has opened. So the current time is exactly the same as we had before. But if not, and this is the way of writing not, if previous time is not equal to current time, then it's definitely a new bar. So we want to return true. But then the next time the EA comes back to check it, we want the current time to be the same as the previous time until a new candle opens up. This is why we assign the current time to the previous time. So the next time the EA comes back here, the previous time then is equal to current time, and it doesn't do anything. It doesn't return a true, it returns a false until the time a next candle arrives. And then of course the current time of the next candle is going to be different, and therefore again the entire procedure will continue, and therefore again the previous time will not be equal to current time, and then we will have a true value until the next time. So this is our first function. Then the next function we're going to need is a function to find a high and a low. So I'm creating a function and I'm calling it find high, and it's a double function, so it will return a value of decimals. Now in MQL, double means a variable which can store decimal values, so 100.3334, something like that. It's a double variable. A variable that cannot store the decimal will be integer, so it will only store 1, 2, 3, but it will never store 1.1. We want to find a high, and normally the prices are in decimals, so we want to create the function to return a value which is going to include decimals, and this is why I'm creating the function as double. Visually, it is very easy to find a high. So we know that this is a high. We can say that this is a high, then this is a high, then this is a high, this is a high, this is a high, and this is a low, 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 and so on and so forth. So visually, it is very easy and intuitive to find a high and a low. But how do we tell MQL how to find the highs and lows? The way that we're going to achieve this is we're going to tell MQL that at any point in time, look for 5 candles to the right and 5 candles to the left. If all the 5 candles on the left and all the 5 candles on the right are below the middle candle, that's what we call a high. Now, it can be 10 candles to the right, 10 candles to the left, 20 candles to the right, 20 candles to the left. But the logic is the same. So as long as X number of bars on the left and X numbers of bars on the right are below the middle candle, we call it a high. So back again in Meta Editor, we start by creating a double variable, and we call that variable highest high. And we assign it a value of 0 because we don't have a highest high yet. So that's the starting point. The next thing we do is we create a loop. And this is how you create a loop in MQL, by saying for, and then for an integer value is starting at 0, and as long as it's below 200 or 300, 400, run these codes. And every time increase the value of I by 1. So start at 0, run the code, come back, make I equals 1, then run it, then I equals 2, then run it until the time that I hits 200, and that's when you stop running the loop. So all of the codes which we are going to write here between these two curly brackets are going to be run for 200 times. We start by creating another variable, and again a double variable, so we can store decimal in it, and we call it high. And in that variable, what we're going to check on every loop by using the iHigh function, and the iHigh function in MQL returns the highest value of a candle. So for example, on this candle, this is the highest point. This candle, this is the highest point. So that's the point that iHigh is going to return. So we want to get the iHigh, meaning the highest point of the candle. We send the value of the current symbol, which when we say underscore symbol means the current chart. Then the time frame variable that we're going to define later, so that our user can define whether he wants to run this on 5 minutes or 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And then check the value of the bar number I. So if it is starting, then I equals 0, next time I equals 1, then the next time I equals 2, and so on and so forth until 200. So every time we're going to be looping, we're going to find the high of this candle, then this candle, then this candle, then this candle, and so on and so forth, 200 candles backward. And then we say that if I is greater than bars n, and we're going to create a variable bars n, in which we're going to store the value of how many bars to the left and how many bars to the right you need to look. So if I is greater than bar n, because we don't want I to be the last candle, because we want to check 5 candles to the right, and that's not possible. So the first time that 5 bars on the right are going to be possible is if the I is greater than whatever is the number of bars we're checking on the right. So if I is greater than bars n, then check the I highest. And if you use the I highest function in MQL by sending the symbol value and the time frame value, and then telling MQL, okay, which mode am I looking for? Am I looking for high or am I looking for low? And then starting at which bar and how many bars to look. Then MQL is going to look back that many bars, and it's going to find the highest value within that range. So here we are checking. For bars n times 2. So if our bars n is 5, so if we are checking for 5 bars to the right, 5 bars to the left, then bars times 2 is going to be 10. And then we add one more to it, so it's 11. So we're asking it to check 11 candles backwards, starting at whatever is the current I minus 5. So if the current bar is this one, then start here, 5 bars to the right, look back 11 bars and find the highest point. So for example, if we were starting here and looking back 11 candles, the highest point is going to be on candle number 6. And this is what we're going to get here. This function is going to return in that range of 11 candles, which number candle has the highest value. Or if the candle that you find as the highest candle is the one that is the I, then we know that it is the high of that range. It has 5 candles to the left and 5 candles to the right. So we have found our high. And then if high is greater than the highest high, so we started with a value of 0, but if it is greater than that, then return the value of high back, because now you have found the high. And the reason why we do this check is because if the EA has already found a high, let's say here, so we do need to check that the new high that it has found is actually higher than the last high it had found, so that we don't go downwards, we only go upwards. And then as the last step, we say return the high back, and then make the highest high value equal to whatever is the higher value between high and highest high, so that the highest high has now stored the highest value. And then if you cannot find anything, just return -1. So this is how we tell MQL how to find the high. Now, no prizes for guessing how to find low, which is the exact opposite of finding the high. So we're going to create another function. We call it find low. But this time we start the lowest low value as double max. We cannot start it as 0 because the EA is never going to find a value of a low below 0. So we start with whatever is the max value available within MQL. And then we do the same iterations of looping, finding the lows this time, and then checking if the I lowest happens to be right in the middle of the range that we're looking at, the 11 candles. And if it does, then we return the low, and then we set the lowest low to whatever is the math minimum between the low and the lowest low. If it cannot find a low, then just return -1, which is return nothing. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is, because we are asking the user to provide how much loss is he willing to take on one trade. So now we need to do a calculation to calculate the lot sizes. So I'm going to create a function and I'm going to call it calculate lots. What we're going to send to the function is a double variable by the name of SL points. We're going to send a value to this function of how big our stop loss is in points, whether below the price in case of a buy or above the price in case of a sell. We're going to send what's the distance between the entry price and the stop loss to this function. And then we're going to ask the function to calculate for us what the lot size should be. So we start with creating a variable, we call it risk. And here we're going to convert the risk percent variable, where we're going to collect the value from the user in terms of percentage. We're going to convert it into absolute value by first converting it into a percent and then getting the info of what the account balance is. So if the account balance is 1000, we multiply it by the risk percent, and that gives us our absolute risk. Then we need to get these three values from MQL, which is how big is the tick size. So for example, for Euro USD, the tick size value is the 5th decimal. So that's the tick size. Then we ask for what's the value of that tick. And then we ask for lot steps. So on different brokers, it can go from 0.01 to 0.02 to 0.03. So these are the steps in which the lot increases. Once we have these three values, then we can calculate the lots. We calculate it by first dividing the SL points that we have sent by the tick size, value, and lot steps multiplication. And then our lots are going to be whatever our risk is divided by whatever is the result of this formula times the lot step. And that's going to return to us the lot size that's going to match the risk percentage depending on the account balance. But as a safety precaution, we're also going to get the minimum volume allowed by the broker, the max volume allowed by the broker, and the volume limit allowed by the broker. And then we can say if the volume limit is not 0, meaning that there is a limit, then set the lot size to the minimum of lots or whatever is the volume limit. Then the same, if there is a maximum volume is not 0, it means there is a limit, there is a max volume, then the lots can be the math minimum of between our calculation of the lots and whatever is the max volume allowed. And in case of minimum volume is also not 0, which means there is a minimum requirement, then the lot size is going to be the higher of whatever is that volume minimum and the lot size that we're calculating here. After that, we just normalize our lot size to 2 decimal, and then we return the value of the lot size. Now, before we go with more functions, let's come back to the top and let's start defining some variables. Now, the first variable that we're going to ask our user to provide us is the risk percent, what you can see here. And the way we tell MQL that it's a user-defined variable is by starting the command as input. So the MQL knows that it is an input variable it needs to ask the user. And it's a double variable because it will store decimal values. We call it risk percent, and we assign it an initial value of 2. So that's the default value. Now, risk percent as a variable itself, it's a very unique name the user might not be able to understand. So if after 2 slashes you write something, that's going to appear here for the user in the input tab. So we say risk in percentage on each trade. So that's what the user is going to see as a description in the input tab. Then the next variable we're going to ask is the time frame. We're asking the user to define already for us whether he wants to run it on 5 minutes chart, 10 minutes chart, 15 minutes chart. And the reason we're asking here is because in Metatrader, once he has assigned the EA on the chart, the user might actually switch between 1 minute chart, 5 minute chart, 15 minute chart. But then the EA will get confused whether it needs to run the code on 5 minutes chart, 15 minutes chart, 30 minutes chart. So it will depend on what is currently selected. We don't want that. So we ask the user to provide a value. So no matter what the value of the chart time frame is, the EA will always run it back on whatever the user has defined. The third variable we're going to ask is the one that we have already used, which is the bars n. It's like how many bars to the right and how many bars to the left to look for. So if I compile it now, and I don't have any errors. So now if I go back to Metatrader, then under the expert advisors, I will find my new scalping robot. If you cannot find it, then just right click and refresh. And it should bring your scalping robot here. Now drag this scalping robot to the tester And if you can't find the tester, here in the view, you click on a strategy tester. And now if you go to input tab, now you can see that these are the three variables that we have currently defined in our EA. And they are displayed here as the description which we put after the 2 forward slashes. So back here, 4 more inputs that we are going to require from the user are going to be the TP points, the take profit points, the stop loss points, the TSL points, and the TSL trigger point. These are provided in points, not pips. 10 points equal a pip. The TSL point is going to be how far from the price do we want our stop loss to trail. So we're saying 1 pip. And then we are also asking the user to provide when to start trading. So how much the trade needs to be in profit before you trigger the trading of the stop loss. And we are setting it to 1.5 pip. So once the trade is in profit by 1.5 pip, then I start trailing the stop loss by 1 pip. Then besides the bar's end, I'm also going to ask the user to provide an order distance point and an expiration bar. Now, first the order distance point. So if this is our low, but the price is here, I don't want to send the order because the price currently is extremely close to the low that I have identified. So how much should be the distance between the lowest point or the highest point with current price before we send the order to? So if this was the high, I only want to send the order once there is a distance between the current price and that high by more than 10 pips. The expiration bars is once we have sent the order to the server, it's going to stay there forever until the time that we either delete it or it expires. So when we're sending the order, we will also send a command to the server saying that once you have placed the order, keep it valid for 100 bars, but then after the 100 bars, expire it. So if it's a 5-minute chart, then after 500 minutes, expire it. If it's an hour chart, then after 100 hours, expire it. If I compile it now and go back to Metatrader, I will see that all of my variables that I'm asking are now defined here. And the user is able to provide the inputs either by putting the value or by selecting it from a drop-down. Now the next thing we're going to collect is the time frame, during which time to trade. And for that, we're going to create a variable type because it doesn't come with MQL. We're going to create a variable type where we're going to have values of inactive, 100 hours, 200 hours, 300 hours, and so forth until 2300 hours. And we create a new variable type by saying enum and then giving it a name and then putting within the curly brackets what values it can have. So now that I have this variable type, which has these values to choose from, I can ask my user to now provide an input on a variable that I'm calling sh input, so start hour input. And I'm giving this variable the type is start hour that we have created in this line. So now if I compile and go back to Metatrader, I will see now that there is a start hour and here is our drop down and it has the values that we created in the variable type. So now the user can select what hours it wants or if it wants it to be inactive. Then we do the same thing for end hour by creating an enum, a variable type, calling it end hour, putting exactly the same as here. And then we ask for input and store it into a variable that we're going to define as th input, so end hour input, and assigning it the variable type as end hour that we have created here. 2 more things that we're going to need from our users are an integer variable and we're calling it input magic number. And this variable is going to store the unique identification number for our EA so that when our EA places its trade on a server, then later on it's able to identify its own trades from other trades that are placed on the server. And the last one is I'm asking for a string, and a string is a text variable type, and I'm collecting it in a variable that I'm defining as trade common. And for now, I've put the value as no shenanigans. If you compile now and go back, you will see that our start hour and end hour have also come here. We have our unique EA number, which the user can define, and user can also write whatever comment they want. And as the last variables, we're going to create 2 more variables by the name of sh choice, so start hour choice and end hour choice, where we're going to store the value of whatever the user has selected in sh input and eh input. We're going to store it here. These are all the variables that we're going to use in this EA. Let's go back to defining our functions. Now the next one I'm going to create is when we find a suitable high, then we will send a buy order. So I'm creating a function by the name of execute buy, and we will send to this function the value of the price that we want to set the order, basically the value of the high for buys. So we start by collecting the ask value currently in the market by sending the information of the symbol for which we are asking the ask value and asking back the symbol ask value through the symbol info double function. Once we have the ask value, then the next thing we do is we look that if the ask value that we're getting here, if it is greater than the entry point that we're sending, the high point, minus the order distance point, so where it should be or below. If it is higher than that, then we don't want to send the order, so we basically say return, which means don't do anything further, just exit this function. But if it is not, then we know that the price is currently below the point at which we want to send the orders, and in which case we start preparing to send the order. So the first thing we do is we create a TP variable and a stop loss variable. Our TP variable is going to be whatever entry price we are sending, which is the high, plus the TP points, which we have collected from the user, how many points to set the TP at, and the SL points, but convert it into the points decimal system of whatever the currency pair is. So for example, on Euro USD, you have normally 5 decimal places, but on USDJPY, you have 3 decimals. So using the correct decimal values is important, and that we achieve by multiplying the points by a generic value that comes with MQL as underscore points, and that converts the value of the TP points into the correct point system. We do the same for SL, but the SL is going to be entry minus the stop loss points converted correctly for the decimal system. And then we start with a standard lot size of 0.01 as a default value. And then we say that if the risk percent is greater than 0, so if the user has provided a value in the risk percent, if it is greater than 0, then the user has provided a value, in which case we don't want the default lot size. We want the lot size to be calculated by sending the entry minus the stop loss distance to our calculate lots function. And this entry minus the stop loss is basically where our entry point is, where our stop loss point is, the distance between the two. So we're sending the distance between the stop loss point and the entry point, and not the stop loss itself. The next thing we look at is the expiration, because we need to set the expiration for the order. And this we calculate by getting the time of the current candle by using the itime function for the 0 candle, meaning the current, the last candle, and then add to it whatever number of expiration bars that we have defined. So here we have set 100. Here we have set 100. Convert it into whatever is the period second of that time frame. So if it is 5 minutes chart, then basically it will be 60 times 5, 300 seconds altogether. Multiply by the number of bars. So 300 seconds multiplied by 100 bars, 3000 seconds from the current time by adding it, and that is our expiration time. Once we also have our expiration time, then we can send the order. Now, in order to do trading operations in MQL, we need to make a reference to an MQH file. So we come back to the top and we provide a reference to a file by saying hash include, and then providing the path, which is going to be here in the include folder, in the trade folder, and the file name is trade.mqh. Now this trade.mqh file comes with MQL, where MQL has written all of these codes so that we don't have to write it, and we can just call these functions to do the trading operations. Now the 3 functions we're going to use are cTrade function, cPositionInfo function, and cOrderInfo function. Now the cTrade function does trade. So all of the trade operations are going to be done through class type cTrade, and we're assigning this class to a variable that we're creating and we're calling it trade. Now if you want to collect information on the current positions which are open on the server, then we use the C class positionInfo, and we're assigning it to a variable we're going to call POS. And same for OrderInfo, we're assigning it to a variable that we're calling ORD. So now that we have the trade variable, we can go back to our execute buy function, and here we can write trade. As soon as I will hit the dot, all of the trading operations which are available are going to now be available to me. The one I'm using is the buy stop because we're sending a buy stop on the high value in the market. When you will open up the bracket, it will ask for the value of the volume, which in our case is lots here that we have calculated, or here. Then it asks for the price, on which price you set the order, and that we will send as entry. Then it asks for what is the symbol, and we want to whatever chart it is attached on. Then it asks for what's the stop loss, and we have calculated the stop loss here. Then it asks for TP, we have calculated the TP here. Then it asks for what type of order are you sending, and we're sending, and we say that we're sending order time is specified, so we will specify when to expire it, and then we give it the value of the expiration time through this variable that we have created here and calculated the expiration. And then we finish with a colon. Every code in MQL finishes with a colon. That's the way of telling MQL that this line has finished and now it needs to go to the next instruction. If I compile it again, I do not have any errors, so all good. So then we can proceed to creating no prices for guessing the execute sell order, which is going to be exactly the opposite of the buy order. So this time we collect the bid instead of ask. Then we check if the bid is smaller than entry plus distance point. So if the entry is here, and this is how much distance we want, if the bid is below that distance, then just exit the function. Otherwise, calculate the TP, but this time the TP points are going to be entry minus because it's a sell, so TP is going to be below the price, and the stop loss is going to be higher than the price. Then we start with the lot size, and then if the risk percentage is greater than 0, then we calculate the lot size, but sending the distance again, but this time we will say SL minus entry. Here we said entry minus SL, here we will say SL minus entry, because SL for a sell is going to be above the entry, and we want to send the distance between the two, so this minus this. Then we calculate the expiration bar, and this time we use the trade variable that we have created to send a sell stop by providing the values that we have calculated here. Then one more function we're going to require is to close all orders, which is when the trading time will finish, we will close all of the pending orders. And this I do by going through a loop. So we start for a loop, and this time I is going to be equals to orders total. So how many orders are there on the server? Get all of them. So if there are 5, then I want to start the I as 5 minus 1, because I will go as 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. So if there are 5 values, I've got 5 iterations, so I will start with the value of 4, so that it can go down to 0. So I equals whatever the number of the orders are there on the server, and then decrease the I by 1 by saying I minus minus, that's I minus 1. Decrease the value of I by 1 on every iteration. So when we're going through all of the orders, every time I will become smaller. So 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. And then as long as it's bigger than or equals to 0, then run these codes, which is to select the order. And this where we're using the order variable that we created and assigned to class order info. So now we're using that here by saying order and then select by index. So select this order by its index number. So for example, if there are 5, then start as 4. Get its ticket number by saying ord.ticket number and assign it to a variable by the name of ticket. And then if the symbol of this order is the current chart symbol and the magic number of the order is our magic number, then that basically means it's our trade placed by this year and it is on the same chart. So it is the same currency pair as well. And in that case, just delete the order by providing the ticket number. So this is how we will close all the orders. So now that we have written all the functions that we need, let's go back up all the way to our initialization of the EA. And the first thing we do is we assign on the initialization of the EA the magic number by saying set expert magic number, and within there we say input magic number, and then finishing with a colon. So now all of the trading operations which are going to happen by this year will have this input magic number as the magic number assigned. The next thing we do is we assign the value of what we have collected from the user as start hour input and end hour input up here to these variables that we defined. So let's assign the value of start hour input into start hour choice and end hour input into end hour choice. Then we go to the OnTick function. And then on every tick, what we want the EA to do is to check whether it's a new bar. And we do that by saying if not is new bar, meaning if it's not a new bar, then return. So exit the function, don't run the codes below. So all the codes which are going to be written below this line are only going to be run on every new candle and not on every tick. And this we do because we don't want the EA to check on every tick all of the stuff. It's good enough to do it on every new candle. Then we get the current time and we create an MQL date time variable and we call it time. And you will understand it in a few seconds. And then we use the function time to structure and we send to it the current time. And then we assign the value of the structured time to the variable that we have defined here. By doing this, now what we can do is when we write time and hit dot, then the time can now be split into day, day of the week, hour, minute, second. So for example, if it's 2100 hour, now I can get the value of the hour as 21 rather than the entire time. The thing that we are interested in is hour. So we create another variable and we call it hour now, and we assign it the value of time.hour. So whatever is the current time, the hour of that current time. Now that we have the value of the current time in hours, we can now compare and we go that if the hour now, this hour now, the current time hour is less than the start hour choice. So if the start hour choice was 700 in the morning, but the hour now is 4, then basically close all the orders and return, meaning exit this function, don't do anything else. So don't do any trading operations before the hour now becomes bigger than the start hour. And then if the hour now is greater than or equal to the end hour choice, and the end hour choice is not inactive, then in that case, close all the orders and return. So basically only run the codes below during the trading time defined by the user. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to check if there are already orders placed by our EA on the server, or if there are already open positions, because then we don't want to send more orders. So we start by creating two variables, buy total and sell total, and we assign it a value of 0. And now we're going to loop through all of the positions and all of the orders. So let's first loop through all of the orders on the server by exactly the same way as we did it for close all orders. Is we're creating a loop, for loop. We're starting with total number of orders on the server minus 1, because it's going to go down all the way down to 0. So 5 equals 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. And as long as I remains greater than 0, then run these codes. And every time decrease the I by 1. So go 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. And on every iteration, select by index the order. And the index would be whatever is the I now. So 4, 3, 2, and then 1, and then 0. And then if the order type equals buy stop, and order symbol is the symbol on the chart, and the magic number of the order is also equal to our magic number, then it's an order placed by us on the same currency pair. In that case, increase the value of the buy total by 1. When you say buy total plus plus, it basically means plus 1. So now buy total will become 1 if there is an order. And if the order type equals sell stop, and it is the current chart symbol and our magic number, then we know it's our trade placed by our EA on the same currency pair. So then the sell total becomes 1 as well, or whatever is the sell total, increase it by 1. Exactly the same way, we're going to check if there are open positions by looping through all of the open positions on the server, selecting them by index, and then checking if the position type is position type buy, it's the current chart symbol, and it's our magic number, then buy total increases by 1, and sell total increases by 1 if it is sell type sell, and it's on our chart and using our magic number. So now if buy total is less than 0 or equal to 0, that means we didn't find any order and we didn't find any open positions. In which case, we're going to send the high by finding the high, assigning it to a variable by the name of high. And if there is a value of high, so high is not 0, is greater than 0, meaning there is a valid value, it's not a mathematical error, then execute the function that we wrote as execute by sending it the entry value as high. So then the E is going to go here and it's going to run this function and send this buy stop using the value entry, which is the high. Then exactly the same procedure for sell total. So if sell total is less than or equal to 0, which means that we didn't find any sell order, we didn't find any sell positions, in which case find the low. And then if low is greater than 0, so it's not a mathematical error, it is a valid value, then execute the sell by sending the value low as the entry. So the system will come down here and execute the sell stop by using all these parameters. If we compile it now, we hopefully do not have any errors, which basically means our EA is almost complete. And when I say almost complete, the only thing it's missing now is the trailing stop function. But before we write the trailing stop function, let's check if all of the codes we have written so far, they actually work. So I'm going to head to Metatrader. And here, now if I refresh it to default, I have all of these values. I'm going to run it between 700 hours and 2100 hours. Then I'm going to run it in the visual mode so I can check that the codes that I've written are correct. So here we are, but it looks horrible with all of these grid lines. So I'm going to stop it. And I'm going to go back to Meta Editor. On the initialization function, I'm going to remove the grids by using the function charts at integer. For the current chart, using chart show grid lines and setting it to false. So I'll compile it again. And now if I run it, it definitely looks better. So now the first thing we're going to check is this is the high that our EA has found. It has 5 bars to the left and 5 bars to the right. And this is the first high it could find. And then for the low, I don't see, so it couldn't find any low, valid low according to our definition until here. So it has sent an order at this low point with 5 bars to the left and 5 bars to the right. Why it did not send an order here is because the price is already below this. So it's not a valid low. Same goes for this, same goes for this. These are not valid lows because the price is already below them. So this is the one it found. For the buy order, it set the TP 20 points above, 20 pips above, and a stop loss 20 pips below. And if I look above, then the TP was set exactly 20 pips below. So our codes are working as intended. So we can now proceed to setting the trail stop loss as well. So I go back to Meta Editor, and what we're going to do is on every tick, we're going to call a function, and we're going to call that function trail stop. Why we're running it here is because you would remember that every code below this is new bar check is only going to be run on every new candle. But for trailing of the stop loss, we want to check it on every tick because on every tick the price can move and we might need to trail our stop loss. So the last function that we need to create is a trail stop function. So I'll come down to the bottom and I'll create a void function by the name trail stop. We start with 2 curly brackets, and in between the 2 curly brackets, we're going to write our codes. Guys, on this function, there are going to be so many opening of the curly brackets and closing of the curly brackets that you really need to follow this. Pause this once we have completed the code. Pause it and type it exactly the same. If you miss the curly brackets, one here or there, you're going to have errors. And your trailing stop is not going to run properly. So pay extra attention to this one. So we'll start by creating 4 variables, the stop loss, and we're going to call it 0. TP, we're going to assign it 0. We're going to get the ask price and the bid price from the market by using the symbol info double, sending the chart value, and asking for ask and bid. And then we're going to loop through all of the current positions by doing exactly the same as we have done before. We're going to create a loop for the total number of positions minus 1, because if the total positions are 5, then we're going to run it 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. And again, decreasing the I every time by 1. Then we're going to select the position by index by using whatever is the I value in that iteration. We're going to get the POS ticket number, assign it to a ticket variable, and then we're going to check if the magic position, if the magic number of the position that we have selected here equals our magic number, and the symbol of the position is the symbol of the current chart. Then we're going to check if the position type is position type buy. And if it's a buy, then we know that it's our position by this EA and it's a position type buy. So if it is a position type buy, then what we're going to check is that if the bid minus the opening price of that position has become bigger than the trigger of the trailing stop loss point. So we said that our trailing stop will start at 15. If now the price has moved by more than 15%, so the bid is even higher than the opening price by more than 15, then we need to assign a new stop loss. So we get the current take profit of the position and assign it to the variable TP. But then we redefine the stop loss as bid minus whatever is the TSL points, whatever the user has said, how much to trail it by, in our case 10 points, and converting it to the right point system. Then we go if the stop loss that we have now calculated is above the current position stop loss, because once we start trailing the stop loss above, we don't want to come down, we only want to go up. So if it is above the current stop loss of the position and it's not 0, so there is no mathematical error, then we modify the position by sending the ticket number of the position and sending the new stop loss and the old take profit point. And if it's not a buy position, then we check that if it's a sell position. And then in case if it's a sell position, we have already checked that it's our input magic number and current symbol. So if it is a sell position and not a buy position, then we check if the ask plus the trigger point. So whatever is the price, if I include in that the 15 trigger points as well, if it's still below the open price, that means we are in profit by more than 15 points. In that case, we assign the take profit to TP and we change the stop loss by saying ask plus the TSL points. And then if the new stop loss that we have calculated is below the current stop loss, again, it's a sell position. So if it is below the current stop loss of the position and it's not 0, so there is no mathematical error, then modify the position by sending the ticket number, the new stop loss, and the TP. For this function, there are so many curly brackets, and all of these brackets need to be exactly in the correct place for this to work. So I would suggest that you pause the video here, take your time and code it entirely exactly as it is on the screen. Okay, let's compile it now. And we don't have any error. And this basically completes our base code for the Forex. And we're going to check now if the trailing stop loss is also working. Now, when we will run the normal test, the test is going to be so quick that we're not going to be able to check if the trailing stop loss works. So what we're going to do is, we're going to put a mark here by double clicking and I put a mark here by double clicking, and thereby we're telling MQL to stop if the code comes to this line. And the code will only come to this line if all of these conditions are met. Same for the sell. So if I press the play button now and our testing has started, and as soon as our sell position is open and I think the price has moved in our favorable direction, and this is why the EA has stopped. And it has stopped at this line because it wants now to modify the stop loss. If I press the play button one more time and then go back to Metatrader, then I will see that the price has moved below. And yes, my trailing stop loss is also moving below. Now, if I press it again and go back, I see that the price has moved more so in our favorable direction. So the trail stop is moving along. Then I go one more time, and this time it doesn't stop because now my stop loss has been hit and the position has already been closed. Now let's let it run until we have a buy position as well. finished, and here we now have a buy position, and the EA has stopped, which basically means that it's trying to modify the trailing stop loss. If I press play one more time and go back, I see that now the position is moving in our favorable direction and the trailing stop loss is moving along as well. If I play again, it is moving more. It's moving even further, moving even further. It continues to move and the trailing stop loss is moving along. And I'll press the button a few times. And you can see that the price is moving upward and the trailing stop loss is moving alongside the price. So this concludes the testing of the EA. I will remove these and I will just let it run.
A minor correction, guys. We go up to where we were finding the highs and the lows. And here we had defined as I minus 5 and I minus 5. While what it should be is I minus bars N. Same here, I minus bars N. And the reason for that is if we are using the bars N here to calculate our range, which is, let's say if bars N is 5, then 5 times 2 plus 1, so 11 is our range. Then we wanted to start at I minus bars N, which is 5 bars to the right of the current candle. Same here, 5 bars to the right of current candle. But then if the user defines the bars N to be 10, then it should be I minus 10. And this is why we are updating the value here as bars N and as bars N and not hard coding a number 5. So this concludes our coding. If I go ahead and compile, I do not have any errors. And this is where our coding portion is complete.
No EA is going to make money every day, every week, every month. And we saw it in the backtest as well that there were periods when there were consecutive losses. There were periods of stagnation for months where the EA did not make any money. So if you apply it in a demo account and only base your judgment on a 1 week result, you're doing the EA a bit of a disservice. The second thing is this EA works better during trending markets. It suffers during the time when the market is stagnant, it's just moving sideways. The third point is it's a scalping robot. So the volume of trades are going to be massive. So you need very tight spreads. Otherwise your broker makes money and you don't. Your spreads on an average need to be below 0.5 pips for this EA to work better. And the last part is your broker needs to allow scalping, which is basically the ability to trail the stop loss very close to the price. We trail the stop loss extremely aggressively and extremely close to the price. And many brokers do not allow that. They have a requirement of 2 pips or 3 pips where you can set the stop loss. And that's not going to work with this EA. Following this video, you should be able to code this entirely, run some demo tests, apply it in a demo account first for 2-3 months to see how the EA performs, what you like about the EA, what you don't like about the EA, because forward testing is the only real testing. In the next video, I will come back with modifications required to modify this EA to trade Bitcoin, gold, and US indices, NASDAQ, and Dow Jones. And then in the last video, I will come back with some more filters that we will apply on top of this base code to limit the trading even further. So for example, if the RSI is above a certain number, we don't want to trade. If the price is way too far away from the moving average, we don't want to trade. If there's a big news event coming up, then we not only don't want to trade, we also want to turn off the EA completely. So those kind of filters I will come back with in the last part. In the next part, we will look at gold, Bitcoin, and US indices and what modifications are required to this EA in order to run those. So until next time, guys, stay safe, trade safe.